Hey everyone, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a tale about how a quote, alpha chad ruins D&D for a player before it even starts. A story about why it's so important to make a character have motivation to join a party, and much more. But first, as is tradition here, here's a kitty to boost our spirits before we delve into the cringe. There we go. Now I think that we are ready for some D&D horror stories. Misogynist Jerk drives me from a game before it even starts. By Reddit user, Who's Your Jedi? My campaign of a year and a half wrapped up earlier this month, and our group is taking a break for a bit due to the DM needing to be out of the country for a few months because of work. This left me looking around on Roll20 for other games to fill the void. I found one that seemed promising. The poster said that they were a paid DM who was looking to run a free game because they had ideas that they were just that excited about. The setting was going to be the Forgotten Realms, and that they had a good knowledge of the lore that they wanted to weave into the story. I like free and the realms, so this sounded great to me. I applied, got in, and was really excited. The cast of characters in this sorry tale goes like this. Me. I just wanted to play a druid. DM. The guy who got my hopes up. Unlucky. You'll soon see why. Quiet guy. Didn't say much, but it was important the few times he did. Teen. Part of the problem. And Jerk. The main problem. So, a few hours before the game, the DM was confirming everyone could make it, and reminding people to have their sheets ready to go in Roll20, and that they were a stickler for that. Teen kicks off our problems by posting weird rambles about Skyrim mods, poems about watches, I kid you not, and complaining about how little allowance he gets from his parents. This wasn't advertised as an 18+ game, but I was leery of letting someone who was obviously a minor in on things. But it wasn't my call. For whatever reason, the DM didn't kick Teen for trolling us or whatever he was trying to do. Eventually, it was almost time to start the game, and naturally, despite being repeatedly told to have a character ready to go in Roll20, Unlucky and Teen had not done so. Unlucky also rolled truly awful stats, so even though he'd said no rerolls, the DM wanted to give Unlucky another chance, since his character would have been trash otherwise. Jerk was vehemently opposed to this, and started going on about how this is not acceptable. Quote, raw as law, and about how honor was on the line. Quiet Guy and I suggested letting Unlucky just take standard array, and Teen was too busy trying to figure out Roll20 to say much. Ultimately, Unlucky raised the white flag and just accepted his crappy rolls, and started to make his character sheet. I hopped in the voice chat, and Jerk was the only one there. I sighed at how bad a start things were off to, and Jerk asked me what was bothering me, and I expressed my concerns. His response was something like, how delicate are you? If something like this bothers you, how do you survive even going to the convenience store? After railing against Unlucky, I had my reservations about Jerk, but this confirmed to me that I was not going to have an easy time getting along with this guy. I ignored his comment and hoped that the DM would set down some behavior ground rules before we were ready to go. While we waited on Teen and Unlucky to make their characters, there was some chatting. Jerk went on about how he'd been DMing for 20 years, and warned the DM that he was going to do a bunch of drugs shortly, in what I hoped was a bad joke. He asked Teen how old he was, to which Teen responded that he was 15. Jerk next asked Teen if he had a girlfriend, to which the clearly uncomfortable Teen said no. That was Jerk's signal to go, you gotta hit the weights, man. Do that and you'll get some bitches. Listen to me, I'm trying to help you here. This was the first time Jerk used bitches as another word for women, and sadly, it would not be the last. I wish I had said something then, but I was still hoping that the DM would deal with things once we were all ready. I'm sure you can guess how that panned out by this point, since I'm telling this story here. Anyway, Jerk then turned to Lucky and asked where he was from, as he sounded, quote, mad foreign. Unlucky explained that he was from Singapore. Jerk started going on about canning people and, quote, buying black market gum. And Unlucky, to his credit, stayed cool and just said that the laws weren't as bad as people sometimes thought they are. Just after that, Jerk suddenly dropped from the call. It wasn't clear if he'd left or just had a technical issue. I took the opportunity to tell the DM that I thought Jerk had been acting really inappropriate and disrespectful, and Quiet Guy spoke up and echoed my feelings. DM then asked if we thought we should kick Jerk, to which we said yes. Unlucky and Teen stayed out of it, so that might be why the DM didn't say anything one way or another. Jerk popped back in a few minutes later, having switched devices. Unlucky and Teen were finally finished with their character sheets, but Unlucky had stepped away because some hot dogs that he had ordered had arrived, and he had to deal with the delivery guy. I swear this is true. Unlucky was taking forever for God only knows what reason, so Jerk started up again. Hand to God, he said, quote, anyone get any bitches this weekend? At that point, I was done with this, and the DM for not booting this a-hole already. So I said, can we not use bitches as a synonym for women? Jerk replied with, seriously? If you're saying something like that, you must be the biggest... I interrupted, saying, this clearly isn't the game for me. Later, as I cut the call. I then immediately left the server and the Roll20 group. I hate how clearly Jerk's words are burned into my mind, because he is the absolute worst person I have ever encountered in my years of playing tabletop RPGs. I'm just glad I left when I did, as spending a few more hours around Jerk would have been hell. Instead, to get over my bad mood, I took the train into town and had a nice time doing some shopping. I don't know if there's any moral to the story, but if there is, I'd say it's don't be afraid to leave a game right away if someone is being unbearable. Thanks for reading. Yeah, I agree OP leaving in that instance was the right move. From there being an underage player seeming to troll them, to wasted time, to Jerk's compensating Andrew Tate-style attitude, and the DM's refusal to do anything about it, this was definitely a case of no D&D is better than bad D&D. And at least OP was later able to cheer themselves up with some retail therapy. I'd be thinking new dice. Let's move on. Player makes some statements that really left me scratching my head. By Reddit user, Requiem and Gorilla. So, a player that made an insufferable undead character with almost zero background and motivations to go on an adventure or join any kind of party, and most importantly, to engage in any kind of fight. Since he didn't want to give his character any of these, I told him some motivations, based on what little background he made up, that could have been enough to justify his character going on an adventure, joining a party, and engaging in combat. It's important to note that he's the type of player that justifies everything he does with, "That's what my character would do." He either forgot these, or didn't even listen to me in the first place, because we had a conversation a couple days ago that went something like this. Me: so your character doesn't want to be a member of the party. Him: correct. Me: so you don't want your character to be part of this game anymore? Him: no, I want to keep playing him. Me: so are you willing to make the effort to take the motivations that I gave you, or invent some of your own, and use them to be a member of the party? Him: no, because that's not what my character would do. Me: so what do you suggest? Him: They're the ones that have to make the effort and possibly act out of character to take me in their party. Like, bruh, I'm still trying to understand the thought process behind all of this. At what point do you think I'm the one actively making the effort to not be in the party? Because it's what my character would do, since I gave zero motivations to do so. So they have to make the effort and act out of character to take me in. And that makes sense? Needless to say, he's already rolling up a new character that actually has background and motivations. Why would you even let him roll up another character? Why wouldn't he just come up with a reason to join the party with the character that he spent his time making? You would think that it would be common sense to make a character that would want to join an adventuring party when you're joining a game of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, he could be forgiven a little bit if he was new to tabletop RPGs, but OP stated later in the comments that they have been playing for a while. So after all of that, it's beyond me why OP would even consider letting that player roll up a new character. But hey, that is their prerogative. And I wish OP the best of luck with that player, because I have a feeling that they are going to need it. Let's move on. That weird time I was given a red flag, lost a player, still got to keep his money, and all this before the game even started. By Reddit user, Alkajon. Why do people not read? I will start by saying I have a very preferred style of DMing. I have been a professional DM for 3 years, and a DM for 7, and I think all play styles are valid as long as everyone on the table is enjoying them. But I, myself, enjoy most the storytelling elements in my campaigns. If you allow me to, I'm really hands-on with the past of your character, to make the player character the main character of their own story. Keyword being, if you allow me to. Now, I know this is not everyone's style, so I'm very forward in asking people how comfortable they are with me putting my spoon on their backstory. I wrote it underlined on the character creation rules, and in my player questionnaire from Session 0, I have a specific question asking if the players are interested in that approach, if they would allow me to make changes to their pasts, and if there's something I should stay clear from. Enter Player 0. I was looking for people to start a new game. Player 0 found me through Start Playing, and he was interested and excited. I sent him the player questionnaire, safety forms, and character creation rules, and all seemed to be good. As time passes and we're still missing a couple of players, Start Playing charges him automatically. This was my bad. I apologized and asked him if he wanted me to send the money back, and he told me he preferred to save it for his first payment. So I canceled the game and Start Playing so it would not charge him again, and got the money out. All was cool. As the game starts to fill up, I start working with character concepts so I can weave them into the world. I checked Player 0's form. His answer choice for this was do whatever, surprise me, and a no to the question, is there something you wouldn't want me to mess with? Awesome. I started sending him messages about things I found optimal, such as changing his family enemies to a group of NPCs that are relevant to the adventure. Said NPCs would remain the same, just basically reskinned. Or changing a monster that gave him powers to a different monster that is related to the campaign. The bare bones remained the same, things like that. Keep in mind, even with all that I previously said, I still always ask if something is okay. At this point, I have noticed that he's been more quiet, when, one day, I asked him if the mark he had from his encounter with the monster could be something different to fit the new theme. Apparently, this was the last straw, as he told me that he was dropping the game, that he felt that I was messing too much with his backstory, and felt that that was a red flag, since for him, player agency was relevant. I was flabbergasted by this, given all the previous context, also jumping the gun a bit with the player agency thing, and told him that all the changes I suggested were for his benefit, and because I thought it would improve his experience, but that if he didn't like them, he was never obliged to any of them. He said that he had only been nodding along since he had wanted to be accommodating, but that it soured his experience. Again, still shocked by this, I asked him if he wanted to reconsider, given that I have had games and players whose backstory is left completely independent. It was even one of the options in the questionnaire. He did not respond to that. After a day, I asked if he was still there, and if he was still sure of not wanting to stay around, since we had not even had a chance to have a session 0 and see these exact points. Though, nada. No answer. 2 days pass, and I send him a last message, where I tell him that I assumed his silence meant that he is still dipping out, and ask him if he wants his money back and how to send it. Though he apparently ghosted me. It's been like 4 months since that, and the campaign has just finished its first act, and we are having a blast. The new player we got instead of player 0 is amazing, and we love him. I'm just still in disbelief of that whole experience. I gave every chance for this guy to tell me what he wanted, and yet, here we are. Why won't people just read? Anyway, I don't think I'm in the wrong here, but I suppose I'll leave that to the Reddit gods to decide. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Well, I would agree that OP did nothing wrong here. It sounded like he had everything in place for anyone joining that game to know what was going to go down, and all the options that they had. It's on the player for not speaking up when OP was suggesting the slight modifications to his character's background in order to weave his character better with the setting that OP was providing, which, in my opinion, I would have loved. I know from experience how cool and exciting it can be when you're playing D&D with friends, and the Dungeon Master shines the spotlight on your character that way. So for that player to react that way was pretty out of left field. I would tell OP not to feel bad at all. Like he said, he tried to get a hold of the player to get him his money back, and the player just ghosted him. I would consider it a payment for the headache that that player most likely gave OP. Let's move on. Climax of the campaign ruined by a bad player. DM let it happen. By Reddit user, Horny But Tired. I used to play with a guy that we'll call Dr. Evil. He's an old friend, and I actually taught him how to play back when we were in grade school. He's a good dude and a great DM, unless he's in a mood. And this is the story of what happened once when he was definitely in a mood. So Dr. Evil is a brilliant dude, but he has some baggage, and in his 20s, he dealt with it by drinking a lot, and sometimes springing TPK encounters on his players. Everyone loved him as a person, no better friend to have, and his games were amazing 90% of the time, and nowadays, we're all kinda past that kind of thing anyway. But back then, you just had to brace for the possibility that on any given night, it was gonna be ugly. Leaving out a tedious recap of a long campaign, the whole thing culminated with trying to save an elven artifact that was the touchstone of life for all living things in the game world, from what is basically a nihilistic demon who wanted to eat it to gain its power, which may or may not have worked, but definitely would have killed every single living thing on the planet. Dr. Evil set up the encounter in a really clever way, so that we were basically playing keep away. The demon would come after who had the stone, and they would toss it to someone else on their action and take some lumps, while everyone else in the party would do some damage to the demon. We figured we could keep this up until we killed it. Until someone tossed it to Problem Player. Problem Player was a good dude, but he was kind of an inconsistent role player. And sometimes, he was more interested in doing something that struck him as interesting or funny than actually playing well with the group or advancing the game. And this time, his character was a cleric who had never revealed his god. There was a god of secrets in the game, and we all just assumed that's who he worshipped. That assumption was a mistake. We pass him the stone, and he hurls back his hood and screams, "All shall perish for the glory of Hastur," or some crap like that, and then leaps into the mouth of the demon with the stone. So yeah, He'd been worshipping the Old Ones or some crap like that, and tanked the whole campaign at the very climatic encounter. And Dr. Evil, who was a couple of six-packs deep, and in a mood, just laughed his ass off. Problem Player did apologize later, and Dr. Evil acknowledged that it was a mistake to let Problem Player play that kind of character, and also a mistake to let him pull that crap on the rest of us right at the end. But it stands out to my memory as one of the most infuriating and upsetting sessions I've ever played. Still kinda funny though. Well, that is certainly one way to end a campaign. I'll admit, if I was a player in that game, I would have probably been a bit peeved at the cleric as well. But at least OP has a more fond way of looking back on it today, and now has an interesting story to tell. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.